So I think we're all set. Avita, do you see my talk still on the screen? Oops, I just lost you. Was that a yes?
Yeah, that's a yes. I can see it.
All right. Thank you. She's my co-pilot tonight, so she's kind of helping me out. So, all righty. So today's November 17th, Holiday Survival Guide. And so what are we going to cover? So weight loss strategy review, what constitutes a healthy meal, tips and strategies to survive the holidays, and the the bulk of this material is going to be from Avita tonight. And then we're going to demonstrate a healthy Thanksgiving meal. So I've got some turkey soup here I'm going to make, and I've got all the ingredients ready to go back behind me here on the stove, and we'll switch over to that towards the end of the talk, and that's usually a good chance we can do some Q&A. If you guys have questions for myself or Avita, we can definitely answer those. So weight loss strategies, just to recap, really throughout the year, and if you guys have followed me more than a year, you've seen a lot of this stuff repeated. But just as a basic recap, maybe for those who are new to me, weight loss strategies, usually you want to start out with sort of a baseline healthy diet, at least the way I always go about it with my patients, and what I think is really the best way. My plate is kind of a role model for kind of what we think is sort of an evidence-based healthy diet model. So basically, if you have a plate in front of you, you want half of it roughly to be full of your fruits and vegetables. The other half split between mostly whole grains for the grains and lean proteins for the protein. And you got the little dairy symbol up on the corner, so that could represent a glass of milk or maybe some yogurt, or could be some cheese, something like that. So that's really the foundation. And then what you want to do with that is employ some type of tracking system. Again, this is what I usually work with my patients. Do you absolutely have to track and weigh to lose weight? The answer is no, but it's there's a big but there as far as, you know, to see sustained weight loss. Generally, people really benefit from some type of what they call self-monitoring. So that would be things like tracking your calories, tracking your weight, measuring your foods to some degree, having kind of a system in place, rather than sort of just trying to strictly focus on the my plate. We always want people to focus on the healthy part of it for sure, but the tracking and weighing is something that's really very powerful, very helpful, to really see steady, consistent weight loss. Exercise program is something where we do what we can. I mean, it depends on your abilities and limitations and everything. We just try to do what we can there. The baseline activity is about 150 minutes a week of what they call moderate level, which is usually sort of a briskish kind of walk. Most of my patients, I can tell you, are generally sort of around that zone when they're working with me on their weight. Not everybody. I mean, sometimes people are, they have a lot of pain, they have a lot of mobility limitations, and sometimes they can't get up that high, but we try to get them to at least that point. And support is a big key to all this. It's an emotional sort of mental thing. Having regular meetups with somebody like myself as a dietitian, or maybe a support group such as Weight Watchers, having family, having friends that are also, eating more healthy, watching their calories, tracking, that kind of thing. All that really, really helps. And sometimes spouses are a huge form of support, sometimes other family members, sometimes friends. And I like to think of these classes as another form of support. Some of my patients join these classes, or former patients, and it really, I think the support piece is pretty key. Can you lose weight without support? Of course, but like a lot of things in life, if we can have some support, I think it's very beneficial for us. So tonight we're going to move into the holiday survival. So this is just a little graphic from my plate, and Avita is going to have quite a few more things to kind of expand on this. But the basic idea is, again, we want to try to enjoy the holidays, but we don't necessarily want to come away with, of course, the 5-10 pound gain. There's just a little blurb in the news I heard the other day where, they said, a lot of times these gains we have over the holidays, they stay with us for many, many months. So it's kind of a legacy that can really last far into the next year. And that's, really not something we want, of course. I mean, that increases risks for us. And it's just, and if you're trying to lose weight going into the holiday, of course, you don't want to backtrack too far. But at the same time, we sort of want a middle ground. We want to be able to kind of enjoy things, partake in the family meals, but do so in a more sort of reasonable way so that we don't, just go completely off kilter and kind of regret it later. So that's what I'm kind of hoping we can focus on tonight. And then, like I say, with every class, I always do the little food segment. So you'll get to watch me make a little healthy meal here at the end, which is just kind of reinforces that, we can make healthy meals that are easy, not expensive, not requiring special chef talent. That's always kind of my theme with these classes and these meals. And these meals are always, the ones I do are always freely available online, and you can kind of download them and see the instructions yourself and do them at home. So without further ado, let me go ahead and we'll see if the technology gods are in our favor here. And I'm going to try to unshare mine and allow Avita to go ahead and introduce herself and kind of get going on her presentation.
Try to share this.
See if I can get rid of this crazy transcript that keeps showing up here.
Bert, can you see the slides? Wasn't sure if...
Yeah, it looks good here.
Okay, great. All right, so like Bert said, I am a graduate student at Virginia Tech, and I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about some smart, healthy habits to kind of keep you on track during the holidays. So I wanted to first start with a research study that was done in 2020 from the National Weight Control Registry, where they looked at about 700 participants on weight strategies that they have utilized to kind of help them keep the weight off, continuously over the years with these strategies during the holiday. And they looked at about 18 strategies, but these top 4 included maintaining an exercise routine that they're already doing, monitoring your portion sizes, tracking food and the calories, and then weighing yourself regularly. And, some of you guys have probably already been doing this and just kind of keeping up with that, especially during the holiday season. And, Bert kind of touched on the My Plate, but I wanted to just mention in terms of portion sizes, when it comes to tracking calories and not being able to do so, sometimes you're at a family event or you're traveling, and focusing on your portions can be a great way to staying healthy without the tracking of the calories. So choosing smaller plates to avoid those overfilling on certain foods. A lot of the appetizer plates can be a great way to monitor how much of the food you're putting. And then when grabbing sides for your turkey or the ham, adding larger portions of vegetables, and then the smaller portions of those calorie dense sides, such as stuffing and sweet potato casseroles. And then this kind of infographic looks at the My Plate on more of the holiday version. So still having your fruits and vegetables, half the plate, including protein and grains. And, lean meats, turkey is a great, portion of the lean meat. And then, you can't always get fruits with let's say your holiday dinner, but having fruits with your dessert and adding it where you can, and just keeping mind of, how much of those foods you're putting on your plate. And I wanted to touch on a little bit about staying fuller for longer throughout the day and just in general. You hear about this saving calories for later, and you really don't want to do that since you don't want to end up overeating later in the evening. So not skipping breakfast and kind of sticking to your normal schedule as you would, just to kind of avoid that overeating once you are at the dinner table. And then when you're eating, it's great to kind of start with your vegetables or your salad. Those higher fiber foods are really great to kind of help you fill up, even though they're not higher calorie foods. They have that fiber that really helps for filling you up. And then adding the lean protein after that kind of helps to slow your digestion and kind of keep you more stabilized instead of going to a higher calorie dense food first, where you have more of those empty calories and are more prone to eat more and more of that. Keeping that towards the end of the meal can kind of help you feel less hungry and less likely to overeat. And then I included a little bit of this calorie breakdown of more commonly known foods during the holiday. And I highlighted the ones that were in red that are more calorie dense for their serving size. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on the mixed nuts. I know they're a lot higher calorie for just a half a cup, but they're not necessarily unhealthy. Mixed nuts, or nuts in general, have a great fiber and protein source. So it can be something to kind of, how I mentioned earlier, to help you keep full, if you're traveling with, or like a small snack throughout the day, just a smaller portion. Even though they are higher calorie, they're still more nutrient dense than, grabbing towards a potato chips or some crackers. And then things like, sweet potato, mashed potatoes. In general, potatoes aren't unhealthy, but things that are added to those casseroles, the higher fat, higher calorie items, kind of make those meals, higher calorie. So just being mindful of your portions, especially if you're not able to track, but if you are, you kind of have that idea of how much, fat and calories are in each item. And if you're hosting this year, it can be a great way to use that as a way to adjust what you usually do to make it a little bit healthier, kind of keep on with your goals. And one way to do that is kind of starting before the event, filling up your cart with fresh produce, including the sweet potatoes and winter squash, broccoli, carrots, green beans, apples, fresh cranberries and pears, things that are commonly used during the holidays, and going more for the fresh produce rather than the canned or the more processed items that can help reduce those higher sodium, added sugars, or higher fat items that are included in the canned versions of some of these things like cranberries and green beans and things like that. And then adjusting some of your recipes with healthier swaps is another great way. Adding more low sodium broth than your typical general chicken broth and things like that. And then reducing your butter and margarine and substituting that with applesauce for your baked goods is a great way to reduce the fat, but still kind of, sometimes it's that half and half substitution. And it's also a great way to add some more fiber in there. The applesauce is a great way to include that. And it's also, if you add no sugar applesauce, it's a great way to reduce the sugar as well in the meal. And then choosing fat-free dairy products for your dips and sauces, things like low-fat yogurt for like a ranch dip instead of sour cream, and then using lower-fat cheeses for casseroles and sides. And overall, you're not necessarily changing the whole recipe to make it something that people aren't aware of, but it's just making those alternatives and a lower-fat, lower-sodium items. And then instead of fried toppings, things like fried onions, using sliced almonds can be a great way to still have that crunch, but in a more healthier option and not necessarily fried. And the almonds, of course, like I mentioned earlier, great protein and fiber source to top on your meals. And then I included a little bit of a layout in terms of hosting, adding fruits and vegetables at the start of the buffet line and kind of serving them first if you don't have that layout, the buffet style, kind of provides not only for yourself to eat the fruits and vegetables, but, with your guests, kind of including that in the setup can be a great way for you to have that more control of how your guests are eating, how you're eating, and how you're serving your food. And then, with guests coming to your event, their first thought is not going straight to the vegetable tray. So you can always make that spot more appealing, adding that into the front before people go towards the more, higher calorie sides, and making it more appealing could be a great way to switch that up. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, the smaller plates to avoid overfilling, since you have that option to bring that in. And then communicating with your guests, seeing what they're bringing or what they may offer to bring, and kind of looking at how those meals compare to what you have. And if they're, are bringing more higher calorie foods, making more healthier items can kind of balance out the overall meal. So everyone can kind of get a good balance of each, some vegetable foods and some more like higher calorie stuffing and things like that. And then I think a great tip, and goes really well with the holidays, is sending your guests with leftovers. A lot of that weight gain and especially how Bert said, it can keep going for months on end, is all those leftovers that we have, especially when we're hosting. So I know people who will buy those like 20-pack to-go containers from Amazon just for the holidays, and we'll, make sure every guest has a little to-go box so that we're not left with a bunch of leftovers to eat for weeks on end and going into the new year especially. And then if you are not hosting, but actually attending a party, whether it's family or a work event, there's definitely great ways to still make those healthier choices. One would just be before you leave the house to go to the event, have a filling snack, kind of avoiding that overindulgence when you arrive. So choosing those higher fiber, higher protein snacks, and just not going in fully hungry to the event. And I think a great way once you're there, just taking time to catch up with friends and family, getting settled in, not really going straight to the food area, just kind of getting your boundaries figured out. And then once you are ready to go to the food table, having that plan and kind of seeing what's there and being more mindful of like what you're going to go to, what you may want to try, is a great way to just have that plan and make healthier choices instead of going kind of blindly into it. And again, being mindful of those portions when you are going to grab your plate. And then with that, sticking to those healthier options for the rest of your plate, those lean meats, the vegetable dishes. You may not know everything that's in those meals since, you are a guest, but just kind of looking at it and seeing what you can do and what maybe you're more familiar with is a good tip. And then kind of how I mentioned with as a host, talking to your guests about bringing sides. One way that, if you don't know what the host is making, choosing or bringing a healthier side and talking with them and seeing if that's okay could be a great way to know that you at least have one option that's healthy that, you can put to your plate. So of course, drinks are something that's common around the holidays, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And that can be a lot of where some people's calories end up going because it's just something that we don't always think of. So really sticking to drinks that are under 100 calories or per serving and kind of limiting it to 1 to 2 drinks, especially with alcoholic drinks. Obviously, the more you're drinking, the less aware you are later on of like how much you're eating and things like that. So drinking water in between, staying hydrated throughout can kind of avoid overeating and over drinking later on in the day. And then avoiding drinks with added sugar, things like coffee, juices, or even regular soda, especially during the holiday when there's a lot of those themed sugary drinks. It can be really tempting to want to try like a new Starbucks drink and stuff, but just being aware of a lot of those added sugars. And then once a week is fine, but adding, the more and more you drink them, the more calories you're adding in. And then choosing mixed drinks with like a seltzer or diet tonic water, making sure those mixed drinks aren't added even more calories or even more sugar. And then on the side here, I have a couple of common drinks, especially with eggnog, the calories and the fat per serving. And as you can see, the eggnog is a lot higher calories than the traditional ones, the traditional drinks. But just being mindful of that, even though there's, obviously no fat in a lot of these drinks, they can add up the more and more you drink throughout the day. So if you do want to drink, be mindful of how much calories you're consuming. But, always better to stick with the waters and stick with the lower sugar items. And then I thought this would be really important to include, especially since a lot of us are traveling during the holidays, even if it's for a couple hours within, the states around or even within Virginia or even across the country. It can get challenging, thinking about your goals and staying healthy while you're, busy trying to figure out flights and, traveling and all that stuff. So there definitely can be some ways, packing healthy snacks from home, choosing high fiber, high protein items, having some vegetables on hand or some nuts, things to keep you healthy as you're driving. And then keeping a water bottle with you. I think it's always important to hydrate during that time. And it kind of stops you from or avoids grabbing those higher calorie drinks at the rest stops. And then if you are obviously with family or it's a really long drive and you want to go to a drive-through or a casual restaurant for a meal, making those healthier choices, ordering grilled or steamed, broiled or baked items, choosing those salads with a lean protein and a lower fat dressing, like a vinaigrette dressing. If you go for a burger, you can do like a single patty, with those veggies, keeping the toppings a little bit lighter, with ketchup and mustard instead of a higher fat like mayo. And then, with winter time, we always want to go to the soup. So choosing more of a broth-based soup instead of, those creamier soups that are higher in fat and higher in calorie. So, choosing the broth-based soups is a lot healthier choice to go to. And then for breakfast, choosing oatmeal and eggs, having that fiber, the protein, of course, keep mentioning that throughout. It just really is important with sticking to your goals in that way, especially if you're busy traveling, kind of avoiding the higher fats items. And then in general, just keeping it simple. If you're traveling, you never know what's going to happen. So if you have to go through a drive-through or a restaurant, don't, go too fancy. And if you're not sure what the calories are in the restaurant, just keep it simple, keep it to what you know and under, within your calorie range if you are tracking. And then kind of with that, I'm not going to touch too much on this, but these are just foods on the typical fast food areas, McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King. So the green is less than 300 calories, the yellow is between 300 and 400 calories, and the red is more than 400 calories. And it just kind of shows that even if you do go to a fast food restaurant or a drive-through, there's definitely healthier choices that you can make, and just being mindful and, looking at the menu maybe beforehand before you decide to go. And I know Bert had touched on physical activity, and also how that research had said, keeping up with your physical activity and exercise as much as you can during the holidays. And a great way is just including the family and friends. It doesn't always have to be around the dinner table when you're hanging out with them, walking around the neighborhood, or even ice skating, or even if you are visiting a new place, or a family are visiting you and have never been in the area, going around sightseeing and kind of walking around. Great way to get your family and you to get some physical activity. And then just being mindful of getting some movement day to day, parking further when you're doing holiday shopping, or just kind of getting up around the house, kind of just that movement. It can really help with also stress level. There's a lot of research that shows that exercise can help reduce the stress. And we obviously know how stressful the holidays can be. So just keeping mindful of how much activity you are trying to get during the holidays. And then I included some local events that are in the Roanoke area. So there's the Drumstick Dash, which is a 5K run and family walk held by the Rescue Mission. And that is on the 24th. And I believe it's $25 to register. But you can also do it virtual, and you can just do it from home. You don't have to be at the event itself. And then there's a Grandin Holiday Lights Extravaganza, which is also a walk and run on the 19th. I believe is $7 as well. I'm not sure if they have a virtual option for that. And then I also included this infographic, kind of just showing, based off of the calories of these common foods, the relation with exercise to burn them. Just seeing how much, like a pumpkin pie with whipped cream, it takes about 5 miles to burn that off. So kind of putting it all together with your choices during the dinner, and then how that relates to physical activity. The more drinks, the more higher calorie items, it just kind of takes a long time to burn that off. And so they wanted to include some real life scenarios just to kind of give you a better idea of how a lot of these tips kind of play out. So if, or you're hosting, or let's say I'm hosting, I usually would eat a breakfast, keeping it around 400 calories, and did want to preface that this is about a 1,600 calorie day. So you can kind of adjust it to what, your goals are. And with hosting, I feel like I really want to take that time in the morning to plan everything out, not get too overwhelmed, and just really have that, being mindful about what's to come for the rest of the day. And then, once I've cleaned up the house and kind of running around, having the turkey in the oven, I make sure to have a quick lunch, keeping it within that, 350, 400 calories. I think with hosting, people get really busy during that middle portion of the day, and lunch can sometimes be forgotten. But like I had mentioned earlier, keeping to a normal schedule like you usually are with breakfast and lunch is really important to not overeat at the end of the day. And so as people are rolling in, getting settled, I want to go around and socialize, before grabbing a plate, making sure everyone's kind of coming in and kind of calming down and figuring out, what's going on. And then if I do decide to get a snack, I'll go and grab a small plate with vegetables, like a tablespoon of dip or some cheese and crackers, keeping it within like 100 calories, since I know in about an hour or so, I'll be eating a bigger plate. And then I'll kind of add that turkey first, about 1 to 2 slices, about 100 calories. Then I'll add the roasted vegetables to one side, making sure more of the turkey and the vegetables are a bigger portion of my plate. Then about a half a cup of mashed potatoes and half a cup of stuffing, and then add about a tablespoon or two of gravy over the turkey. And this obviously can depend on, your preference of sides and things like that. And then also I didn't have dessert on there. And I think dessert's always the tricky thing during the holidays. And, it's totally fine to, try your grandma's pie and stuff, but having those portions in mind, and having a smaller slice of pie instead of what a family member may serve you, and just having a couple bites and then seeing how that can kind of fit. But definitely enjoying yourself and trying a little bit if that's something you'd want to do. And I wanted to include this before I go into the real life scenario for attending an event, just because you're not always able to track your calories. So if you're a more visual person, having something like the baseball that is kind of equivalent to a cup, a tennis ball, which is more of a half a cup, a deck of cards, which is about 3 ounces of meat. And then if you're more on the hand side of a visual person, using your thumbs as a tablespoon, teaspoon idea, kind of with the dips and the gravy could be something to think about. Your palm is about 3 ounces, and then a fist is about a cup. A bigger kind of hand scoop is a serving of fruit or vegetables, and then a smaller scoop of your hand is about 1/4 of a cup. So that's great for the nuts. And obviously everyone's hand sizes are different, but I think it's just a great visual. You can always use more of the items like the baseball and tennis ball to kind of look at your plate and see how you're doing with those serving sizes. So that kind of goes into the real life scenario of attending an event. Like I mentioned, keeping a more balanced breakfast and lunch as I would any other day, within that 350 calories. And then if I am driving to an event that's about, more than an hour long, I will make sure to have a snack before leaving. I don't want to go to the event starving. I don't want to, be over indulging later on in the day. So making sure I have a snack, whether it's for the ride or just leaving within the 100 calories in that area. And then if I do, once I get to the party and I'm socializing, I may grab myself a drink. Since I did touch a little bit on that earlier, making it within 100 calories, trying to sip it throughout the day or the evening. And then if I am feeling hungry, I will grab myself a smaller plate, some vegetables, some crackers and cheese while I'm talking to people, keeping that, on the smaller side, about 150 calories. But sometimes I find that if I arrived and all the food is already there, I may skip that appetizer plate and just kind of already make myself a dinner plate. Kind of similar to what I had mentioned earlier, the turkey and the vegetables filling up a larger portion of the plate, then adding, some mashed potatoes, half a cup of stuffing, and then again, some gravy. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the dessert, really just enjoying your time with your family, enjoying all the yummy food. It's not like you can't have any of the food, but just being mindful of your calories, and your portion sizes when you can look at that, and just, being mindful and present when you are at these events or you're hosting these events. So these are some of the resources that I believe Bert will send some of these links as well later on or later in after the presentation. So with that, I can send it over to Bert. Make sure I'm here. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Avita. And I don't know if I gave you a proper introduction, really. I think we're so focused on all the technical hurdles with this, these videos and everything. But Vita is a master's student with Virginia Tech's dietetic program and Carilion Clinic, and she shadowed me for a couple days and was able to see a couple patients. And I kind of tasked her to help with this talk tonight. So good job, and thank you so much for sharing all that with everyone. And yeah, and if any of you guys have a question, we've got plenty of time. I think we're running a little quick here as far as time, so we we have plenty of time. So if you guys have questions on anything she presented, I mean, you're more than welcome to go ahead and unmute and sort of ask your question or put it in the chat. Okay, so I'm just kind of reading the chat. Everyone's saying awesome, thank you. Loved your slides, very helpful. I think we got another question maybe coming in. So somebody is typing, I think. It looks like Eva Shelton's typing right there. So let me see. We'll just kind of wait for just a moment on that. Okay, I think she just, oh, here we go. Question, Wendy's, what about just a plain potato?
Yeah, I
Any
think
thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, I think with like loaded potatoes, that's where a lot of those extra calories can go. But I think a plain potato is totally fine. Making sure if you do have more of a meal, having some vegetables on the side as well, kind of keeping that more balanced. But I think, yeah, I have no problem with a plain potato.
Yeah, I get questions a lot about potatoes. People sort of feel like they are, almost toxic, I guess. Like people are thinking like, potatoes are bad. I need to avoid potatoes. I mean, I think generally dietitians would tell you that, a baked potato is generally pretty healthy. You can get some good potassium as well if you eat some of the skin on it. What makes it less healthy is all the things that we put on them usually. So the kind of the high saturated fat cheeses and, bacon bits and butter and all the things that we love, unfortunately sort of make it less than healthy. So, and potato chips, I always tell people are kind of almost a different food really, and then a baked potato. I mean, it's a process, the so-called processed food. So, um, something like a Pringle, I think, is not even really strictly speaking completely a potato. It's got I don't know what all they put in the Pringle, but I think it's like has some flour in it as well as potato, and I mean, these things are very, treated sometimes under high pressures and temperatures and, refined, and they're not the natural sort of components of what you would pick up in the produce aisle. So our bodies kind of treat them a little differently, and there's been some studies on that people will gain weight actually if they eat a lot of processed foods versus more whole foods if the calories are kept the same, which is kind of interesting. So I mean, it's just we do the best we can with our choices. The holidays, it's kind of difficult sometimes to make perfectly healthy choices, and sometimes what you're presented with is not, there's not a whole lot of super healthy options, but I mean you can choose among the things there usually and kind of make it a little better. um, it kind of gets into some different topics too, but some people are watching their blood pressure. You don't necessarily want to eat a lot of pickled products. I know that and some of the gravies too are very salty, and so there's other considerations beyond calories that we didn't really talk about tonight. But a lot of times if you sort of keep the calories constrained, some of these things are not as big of a hit either, than if you went back and had second and thirds, where you're really getting a lot more sodium and things. So I'm going to go ahead, I guess, and transition to my slides. I got a couple more slides here. Let me see. I'll click the share button and the screen. All righty. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So she did, Vita mentioned a little bit about kind of more brothy soups versus the creamy. And so that's really what tonight's meal is. And while I'm talking about that, I'm going to go ahead and turn my burner on back behind me here and get that started. So tonight's meal is going to be a turkey stew. So the idea behind this is you have sort of maybe leftover turkey from Thanksgiving or maybe even Christmas. Some people have turkeys for the different holidays. And, what do you do with the turkey? So a lot of people might make a soup with it, for instance. So that's kind of what the idea is behind this. And again, this recipe, just like most of the recipes that I give you guys is from MyPlate website. And I'll be giving you guys information from tonight's class, like I always do, to your emails that you use to register for the class. So we've got some links from her talk tonight, but I also have links to the recipe for tonight. So definitely you can refer to that if you have any questions about what it is, that I made. What this is here is this is the breakdown of it. So before I guess we get into the actual recipe. So each serving is about 250 calories. Basically what the recipe is turkey. We've got carrots, potatoes, and some celery in there, and can of tomatoes, and some Italian seasoning, and that's really about it. There's no sodium really added to this, so it's a pretty low sodium dish. The sodium would come about from your tomatoes, and I always use no salt added tomato products when I do these things. But the stats as far as kind of the nutritional breakdown, so the things we look at or kind of focus on, I mean, of course, the calories, uh, protein, 23 grams. So just as a rule, you like to have about 20 grams of protein as a typical kind of meal. That's a pretty good guide. So this is a little over that, so that's great. Fiber is fantastic. I mean, 7 grams. A lot of times you're doing good to have a couple grams. The fiber in this recipe, you're going to look at things like the celery and the carrot, um, are probably bringing most of the fiber to it. Saturated fat is very low, 1 gram, so that's great for your heart health. Added sugar is 0, so you can't really beat that. Carbohydrates, 31 grams. Again, we have some potato and carrot in there. And sodium, 504. So if you're watching your blood pressure, 504, it's okay. We try to, a lot of times keep that below 300. In the recipe that I did, like I said, I use no salt tomatoes. So I don't think mine is actually 500. What they say in the recipe and the instructions is to do salt and pepper to taste. So I think they just sort of assume that you're kind of sprinkling some salt in there. I don't do that with mine. I really don't add salt as a rule to stuff, very little. But yeah, you can bring that up a little bit if you want. I probably wouldn't use more than about a quarter teaspoon if I was gonna do that. So anyway, look like things are trying to burn back behind me, so I'm trying to adjust that. I'm sautéing some garlic back here is what's going on. Um, so iron and potassium. Potassium again, your potatoes are a great source of potassium, and that's a very heart healthy item, and that's good for blood pressure as well. 1,000 milligrams, so that's about a third of your daily amount of potassium. So again, people beat up on potatoes, but I mean, you need potassium in your diet. So get off the potato bashing, people. It's not that bad. Iron is pretty good too, actually, with this recipe. I mean, you got about 2 milligrams. I mean, the turkey's probably contributing a lot to that. That's obviously kind of important for your cardiovascular health to have iron and transporting oxygen, things like that. So this is the ingredients again. Pretty simple recipe. Most of the ones I do, again, are pretty straightforward. So we've got vegetable oil to help you saute things. We've got some onion, garlic, carrots, celery, potatoes, tomatoes, a little bit of water to kind of boil things. 2 cups of turkey. I went to Fresh Market, got some baked turkey. I was lucky to find that, I guess, with the holiday coming up here. They still had some. And some Italian seasoning. I basically have a mix that has the oregano, basil, and thyme and stuff already kind of together. So I use that. And so what we're doing here is just heating the oil in the saucepan. I add the onion, carrots, celery, and we're going to stir fry that. I've already heated the oil. I've already sort of started with the with the garlic. So I'm going to have to add the carrots and the onion and celery here. So and then we're going to go ahead and add the rest of it after that and simmer for 30 minutes. I'm not going to expect you guys to sit here and watch me have this thing simmer for 30 minutes, but I'm just going to get this kind of started. So what I'm going to do is switch back to the camera view. So let me go ahead and do that. Let's see here. Stop sharing. All right, and we're gonna make everyone seasick again, and I'm gonna move this over to here. And so I wasn't paying attention and my garlic burned a little bit. I actually don't really mind that much, but yeah, you don't really want to be burning yours. So I'm gonna add some carrots and I'm gonna add the onion. And adjust the camera here so you can see what I'm doing. All right, and the celery. There's a little char down there where it sort of garlic was burning a little bit. But other than that, it should be okay. So I'm gonna try to angle this so you can kind of see what's going on. It's always kind of tasty when you have the carrot, onion, and the celery. I believe they call it a mirepoix or something like that in my food class. Does that sound right, Avita? Do you remember?
I know there's a term, but I can't confidently say what it is.
I think
Sounds
that's
right.
what they,
Yeah.
yeah, there's this sort of trinity of carrot, celery, and onion that they use a lot in cooking. So looks like my burner turned itself off, so I'm gonna get that back on there. So this just has to kind of saute for a couple of minutes, basically, and then you add the rest of it. So there's some potatoes, tomatoes, water, bring to a boil, and then lower the heat, and that's where the simmering starts. So I've got some potatoes chopped up here. So they've started to kind of get a little brownish colored there just because they've been sitting out for a while. This is the tomato product that I use. It's just a Hunt's, kind of a no salt added. I don't know if you can see it very well, but Hunt's makes no salt products, and I've been getting those for years. I just don't see any point having salt with my stuff, and I can sort of add it as I want to. And then I just have some turkey that's been baked and chopped up into little cubes. And that's really about it. It's not very hard. This should give me, 3 or 4 servings probably, get me through to the weekend at least. So yeah, a lot of that charred stuff. I don't even know if the camera picks it up, but it's not too bad. More or less sort of dissolved. But stuff happens. I know some people, something burns, they panic and throw it away and stuff like that. I mean, for me, unless it's really bad, a lot of times if I burn some toast or something, I mean, it's not the end of the world. But of course, if it's on fire, then might have to get rid of it. Anyhow, did you guys have any other questions or anything? I think I see some stuff in the chat. Okay, yeah, I had the camera cocked there for a while. Oh, the Three Sisters, corn, beans, and pumpkin. I haven't heard of that one before. Corn, beans, and pumpkin. That's funny. Yeah, I figured that the potatoes would probably get a little darker, setting out or whatever, but it's all good. I'm not too concerned about that. I think there is a trick where you could put some lemon juice or something over things if you're going to sit out too, and it keeps them from oxidizing. You don't get that darker color, but whatever. It's just me eating it. It's not, if it was for guests, number one, I wouldn't burn the garlic, and number two, yeah, I'd probably be more concerned about aesthetics as far as like colors changing. But yeah, if it's just for you, I mean, I don't worry about such things too much. So this is just all kind of, I mean, you saute it really until you feel like it's to the point that you like it. I like things to be pretty sort of soft when I do it. I don't like, I'm not a super huge, fan of things that aren't, when you saute things well, you kind of get a little bit of the sugar sort of taste coming out, the sweetness of it, which I kind of like, just the natural sugars and the onions and things, the caramelization. So I like to kind of get to that point where you sort of get some of those flavors in there. And for me, I like when the vegetables get just a little bit softer before I start to, dump in all the water and broth and whatever.
Bert, there's a question in the chat if you use a specific brand of Italian seasoning.
So I do. There's a brand. Actually, my wife sort of got started on a few years ago called Pinsy's, which I think is based out of the Western U.S. That's where we moved from years ago. We sort of been using that, but I mean, you don't need a special brand. I mean, I think we've got some McCormick here that we've used. Um, you know, the big thing with spices is, and something that I also am guilty of, is you really don't want to keep them around forever. I mean, after after about a year or so, a lot of these things they start to lose their flavor. You kind of need to keep an eye on expiration dates and just sort of move these things along and refresh them periodically because I'm sure we've all had the experience of pulling out some really old chili powder and you add it to chili and it's just like dust. I mean, there's no flavor to it. It's just really old. um and we don't want to waste money and toss stuff, but I mean, if it really doesn't even have a flavor or smell anymore, I think it's time to move it on. So I think that's pretty much gone 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm going to add the potatoes. Goes the potatoes. And see, tomatoes. So I already put the seasoning on top of the tomatoes here. So kind of all together. And so water. So they want about 2 cups of water. And yeah, they don't really add the turkey in until the very end. So you want to sort of simmer it for 30 minutes. And the reason is, I guess, as you might imagine, is the turkey would sort of break down or might get really kind of mushy and stuff if it's in there for 30 minutes. Although, we have pressure cooked stuff too that we leave the turkey in there. I don't know. So it's probably personal preference. But it's already cooked, so I mean, it's not like we were cooking the turkey. It's just kind of more or less just heating it up, I guess. But I don't know. I think you could go either way on that one. I think you could put the turkey in earlier, and maybe it might convey some flavor to the soup versus putting it in later. I don't know. But my guess is that's why they're doing it. Is it may sort of get kind of more mushy if it's left in there longer. So this is just going to kind of do its thing. We got to cook it for a while to get the potatoes to be soft. You don't want crunchy potatoes, so we got to get that to go. So I'm going to try to find the lid to this guy. Got like 5,000 lids here, so I think that's the lid. So that's pretty much it for that. Guys have any other questions on surviving the holidays? Any holidays coming up that you're particularly worried about? Any particular meals, strategies that you're looking to employ? Feel free to unmute or put in messages into the chat. Don't be shy. Turn this up a little bit. Oh, okay. So Marianne says, I want to try this recipe. Yeah, it's real simple. So if you want to look it up right now or after tonight, just do a Google search for turkey stew my plate. So the words my plate, just MYPLATE. Or you might want to do my plate recipes and then turkey stew. That should take you right there. So it's the USDA My Plate website, and they've got something like 800,000, I don't know, recipes on there. And so you can just search for turkey, and it comes up with a large number of turkey recipes for Thanksgiving, for instance. A lot of them are good for, like I say, for leftover turkey. And this one's really pretty easy, pretty good. I mean, a lot of us have turkey leftovers. I know. I mean, for me, it's like I just live with my wife. We don't have kids. And I mean, if we get a turkey, it'll take, I don't know, I feel like it takes weeks to get through the turkey, and we have to freeze some of it usually. So we don't really cook a whole bird anymore. It's just too much turkey. I mean, unless we have people over or something, if it's just the two of us. So, I mean, it depends on what you're doing, but yeah, I mean, the times that we have had turkeys and I've had leftover turkey and we're kind of like what to do. I mean, usually my family used to always make something called turkey hash, which is just kind of a similar ingredients actually. I think it was a lot of celery and carrots in that too. I think it was some gravy with it kind of thing. Um, but and I don't know if it was as healthy as this particularly, but it was good. And I always remember kind of liking the hash. Like it's like after Thanksgiving, you sort of look forward to the hash and then have it with the stuffing and stuff. So I'm starting to get hungry just thinking about it. So it looks like another recipe, another questions maybe coming in. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for today. So what I'm hoping, as far as like projecting for next year, I was thinking about this as I was driving home the other day when it was really cold and the wind was blasting. And I want to do some in-person classes again for next year, but I don't think I want to do any in January or February because I don't want to risk having snow. Um, and I also don't have anyone scheduled to help me yet. So I think we're probably going to look at maybe March or so. So I might do another virtual class January, and then maybe when we look to March, I might think about going back in person again, which would be kind of fun. So Eva is saying I stuff the turkey with apples and do not thicken the sauce into a gravy, but just leave it as is and pour in over freshly cooked potatoes. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so hopefully you guys, I mean, for those of you who are tracking and or those of you who are just, maybe not tracking, but just trying to, be sensible for the holidays and stuff like that. Hopefully this helped you a little bit. It's my patients always tell me things like, oh, it's not rocket science or whatever, but I always feel like, sometimes we need a refresher, we need reminders. We have to kind of be mindful about things, as the saying goes. Um, and then usually we can do pretty good. But if we sort of lose that a little bit, things can get a little bit beyond what we want to do. And for those of us who have been, let's say obese or had our weight be a lot higher than what we want, um, I think really research shows, evidence shows we tend to kind of sometimes not have the same signals that tell us that we're full. Um, so we sometimes have to rely on these tips and this mindfulness kind of thing about what we're doing, maybe a little more than other people might. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just kind of how it is. So, I know for me, I don't really have a so-called stop sign sometimes, so I can just keep eating. So like that view graph she had with the 2 or 3, pieces of pumpkin pie, I mean, that could definitely be me. I wouldn't necessarily feel full. I would just keep going. And, so I have to always think about these things. And so I know a lot of you, a lot of you do too. Um, the holidays, the calorie density is really, really high. So the portions just have to be a lot smaller than what you see your friends doing a lot of times. So I guess with that, I won't hold it any longer. I mean, unless you guys have any other questions. Um, again, this video was recorded, so hopefully in a month or so, you'll see it show up on the Carilion Wellness YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch it at your leisure again if you'd like to see it again, or if you missed some part of it. And sometime next week, I'm going to send everyone out the tips sheets. So it has the web links from things that Evita presented tonight. It also has the recipe that I'm hopefully cooking here, and I didn't butcher it too badly. So you'll be able to kind of see that. Look for that maybe, Monday, Tuesday next week. I have to kind of compile it together, and we'll get it sent out to you guys. All right. So thanks for attending. And I wish you guys all very safe and happy holidays. So take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks. You too. Thank you so much for your talk tonight.
Cheers. Have a good evening.
You too.